Hey everyone, this is Cannell, and I'm going to bring you 10 tips to get you started when playing the turn-based roguelike RPG, Stoneshard. Stoneshard takes place in the world of Aldor, a harsh and grim setting that suits the sometimes equally harsh gameplay that it has to offer, and when you begin your journey, you're just another mercenary, not the chosen one or an already competent hero, and it's very conceivable for you to die in your first engagement if you approach it thinking you can take on groups of enemies all at once. But despite that early learning curve, Stoneshard is not the Dark Souls of isometric RPGs or anything like that. Although it can be a difficult game, there are some steps you can take to maximize your chances of success, and if you're struggling, I have some starting tips for you to hopefully live a little bit longer and start to really enjoy the game. Tip number 1, monitor your health and status effects. This one may seem obvious, but keep an eye on your health and the status effects at the top center of the screen. You can just mouse over them and they'll give you a little bit of a breakdown on what they do to your character. But before, during, and after every engagement, take a look at your character's health page. What's their hunger and thirst situation, pain levels, intoxication? Are any limbs broken or significantly low in terms of their condition? What items can you afford to spend to try and improve your situation? And, if in combat, what can you afford to spend a turn on to improve? Do you have time before an enemy closes in? Is there a status effect that is so dire that you can let the enemy have a free attack on you for one turn? Now, there's no one piece of advice here that I can give you that will be the correct decision 100% of the time, but the more you play, the more you'll get a feel for each situation. Also, take your time. Stoneshard is turn-based, so take a moment to analyze your choices and crunch the numbers as much or as little as you'd like, and try and put yourself in the best position to stay alive. Tip number 2, sell your loot to the correct merchants. There is a significant difference between what the various merchants are willing to pay you for your loot as you explore the world of Stoneshard, and knowing this, a lot of your selling decisions become pretty obvious. Metal goods go to the blacksmith, wood goods go to the carpenter, furs go to the tailor, alcohol goes to the innkeeper, and medical supplies go to, you guessed it, the medical supplier in the south end of town. Some of it may seem a little unclear though. An axe, for example, has a metal head but a wooden shaft. Blacksmith or carpenter. This item does indeed go to the blacksmith. What about a mace? Similar issue to the axe, however this one gets you best value at the carpenter. If you're unsure, just compare for yourself to make sure you're getting the best return for your loot, and soon enough, you'll get to know who gets you the best deal for which item. And just as a quick side tip, sell only a select few items to Bert, the general trader in the center of town. He typically gives you terrible value for almost every item. Tip number 3, pull enemies away one at a time when possible. One thing above all others becomes abundantly clear in Stoneshard right from the beginning. You're weak, terribly weak, and you need to be careful until you get better equipment, skills, and attributes before you can take on, well, anything with confidence. So starting out, it's important to move carefully and choose your engagements wisely. Once you know the locations of the enemy, approach them one square at a time from an angle where only one will see you first and trigger an engagement. Once they're alerted to your presence, they will begin to chase, so move away from the camp or the group of enemies to avoid rousing the interest of anyone else, and then take your chances one-on-one. Tip number 4, create a bottleneck when facing multiple enemies. Sometimes it's not always possible to only engage a single enemy. Ambushes in the wild are very common, and in these moments you have to decide whether to dive in on one if you think you can finish that enemy off before the second arrives, or, especially if it's an ambush of 3 or more, you need to pick the location of your fight a little more carefully. This isn't always easy depending on the environment, but take note of where the enemy is approaching from and try and funnel them to a point where there are limited ways for them to attack you. This can be a collection of trees and stumps that give you some cover and let you engage just one enemy at a time, or in dungeons you want to try to engage enemies in hallways to take them on one at a time and prevent yourself from becoming surrounded. It's important to keep in mind that the AI isn't entirely stupid and will find another route to attack you if there is one available. So while that bottleneck of trees won't protect you from multiple attacks forever, it can buy you some time to do some important damage to the first attacker and improve your chances of surviving. Tip number 5, eat the flowers. Now this may sound funny, but bear with me for a second. Your inventory fills up quickly in Stoneshard, especially at the earlier levels where you want to sell anything and everything to get more coin in your purse. However, there is one thing that you should fill your inventory with whenever you get the chance, and that thing is flowers. All of the flowers. They can give you a significant boost during prolonged engagements and between fights. If you take out one enemy only for another to be a few steps away, eat a flower, unless there's other pressing health effects to deal with. You can passively gain some health, energy, reduce your pain level, and deal with a bunch of other negative effects just by eating some of the flowers. Take a gander at what each flower does, they all do different things. So when you find loot, eat the flowers to make room for what you're going to sell. Flowers are cheap, they're found everywhere, so you don't need to hold on to them. Don't worry about selling them or anything like that, but just pick them up when they're available because they can be really helpful in battle. Tip number 6, use your second loadout as storage and for breaking crates around the game world. Every character has 2 loadouts. Some characters may actually utilize the 2 loadouts, using a bow as a primary weapon and then having something like a dagger for melee combat. However, most characters will have a main weapon and use it exclusively, so what can we do with the second loadout? Well, you can toss in any other weapons that you plan to sell in order to save space in your inventory. This opens up more space to carry more loot. 2 extra slots for swords and daggers that you can sell later can make a big difference in what you're able to take back to town. Also, when exploring dungeons or towers, try and switch to that second loadout to break barrels and crates to save the durability cost on your main weapon. It can reduce the final sale value of your loot because it will be more damaged, but it helps reduce the chances of your main weapon getting reduced stats in the middle of a fight because you wasted so much durability breaking barrels, crates, and boxes. Just be sure to remember to switch back using the W key before you engage the enemy. Otherwise, you're going to be using your backup weapons and they're usually not what you want to be using. Tip number 7, save your game. This may seem like a no-brainer, but save your game when you get the opportunity. In Stoneshard, you save by sleeping, whether at an inn or a cleared bandit camp around the world. Take the opportunity to sleep. Even if it's just for the minimum in-game length, it will save your progress right there. Even when you're playing in permadeath mode, just in case you have any technical issues, you won't lose your progress as long as you've saved. Sleeping also gives you benefits beyond just saving your game. You also get boosts that could last for a set number of turns, along with your status effects. Status effects aren't always a bad thing, they're positive ones too. They'll appear in the top center of your screen, and depending on the duration of your rest period, it'll be longer or shorter. This can give you a temporary bonus to XP, which will help you level up a little bit quicker. Tip number 8, using the map. It's easy to get lost in the world of Stoneshard because there are no quest markers telling you where to go or indicating where you physically are in the game world. You need to use landmarks and keep yourself oriented on the map, much like in real life, before smartphones. Whenever you leave the town or any other area, have an idea of where you intend to go and keep in mind how to get there. For example, include a mental map with how to progress to your destination. Are you heading east or west, north or south? How many squares in each direction? If you really want, write down your directions on a piece of paper for quick reference. There's nothing wrong with that. If you ever do get lost or lose track of where you are, try and generalize where you are as best as possible. Which direction will likely hit the nearest road. This will help you re-establish your bearings and get you back on track to your destination. Tip number 9, quests. Quests or contracts can be given to you by some characters in Stoneshard. The first will be in the starting town of Osbrook by the village elder. However, quests can and should also be your self-prescribed goals every time you leave town in search of loot. Don't wander aimlessly because, as we covered, there are no markers on your map to let you know where you are. So decide what you aim to accomplish each time you venture outside of town. Are you looting a crypt, clearing bandit camps, visiting a specific point of interest? Prescribe your own quest so you have a set goal in mind. Beyond that, you have formal contracts which are your standard type of quest. Go to a place, kill the enemies that are there, and then either free a hostage, retrieve some item, or just slaughter all of the enemies in that location. The important thing, as a beginner, is to know when to take on these contracts, and to not rush into anything that your character isn't ready for. When you accept a contract, there is a time limit. However, you are able to complete contracts without initially accepting them to avoid this time limit. If you feel your character is ready to take on a contract, go to one of the towers on the map and test out whether you're ready. If you're overwhelmed, finding it too difficult, back out and stick to the more manageable wilderness until you've leveled up once more, or are able to afford that next great item that will help you overcome this challenge. Tip number 10, building up your character. Stoneshard is a game without classes, leaving you free to build any character you want, regardless of who you choose to start the game as. Each character at the start does come with their own starting specializations, but any item can be equipped and any skill can be learned with the right skill book. With that being said, there are a ton of skill trees with many more in development as Stoneshard continues to get updates. Don't let yourself become overwhelmed by the vast array of choices in gear and skills. Some obviously work better than others together. And think about what your skills do and how you'll interact with and overcome the challenges that your character faces. Once you have skills at your disposal, take your time to think about how they will help you in each given situation and what outside effects may impact them. For example, the weather, if you're a fire mage, while it's raining your spells are less effective, so just keep that in mind. Starting out, it's best to stick to one skill tree when building a character to allow you to unlock the more powerful skills of that tree. If you decided you're going to build this character that specializes in greatswords, max out that greatsword tree. Going to build a spellcaster, focus on one magic type exclusively. There are exceptions and feel free to experiment as you get more comfortable, but starting out, I try and recommend that you create a character that specializes in doing one thing really, really well. That does it for our 10 tips to get you started in Stoneshard. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, click the like and subscribe buttons so you can get more content like this in the future. Also, check out my Twitch where I often stream Stoneshard. I do have a really helpful audience if you have more questions about Stoneshard or just want to hang out. And last but certainly not least, big shout out to Andronius for helping me put together this list and working on some of the finer points that I wanted to convey in this video. Also for being one of those main people who helped me transition from a beginner at Stoneshard to a reasonably competent player at this point. Again, my name's Cannell, thanks for watching.